What is up, everyone? Phil here, and welcome to KO Gaming for my review of For Honor, the third-person medieval-style combat action game that pits Vikings against knights against samurai in a triple-threat duel to the death with a major online multiplayer competitive focus. Now, this game's been in development for quite some time, and I had the opportunity to participate both in the early alpha last year as well as the beta last month. I've been hyped for the full release of this game. And now that it's out there, a lot of people have questions. Is it worth full retail price? Does it stand the test of time? Will it be a game that you're going to play over and over and over again, even though it has only a primarily multiplayer focus, such as Overwatch last year with its big success? Or is it going to fizzle out and die overnight like Evolve did a couple years back? Well, the good news is the game does have both single player and online multiplayer content, although it is geared more towards the multiplayer side. I'm going to outline both the pros and cons of this game in this review, but I have to say up front, overall, with all the anticipation and all of the things that we were led to kind of believe about the game and the initial impressions I had from the beta and the alpha, sadly I don't think it really has lived up to the hype or the expectations that we had for it due to a handful of very critically badly chosen design flaws by the development team. Let's take a look at For Honor. Before I get into the details about the game, I have to preface my review with this statement. I played the game on the regular PlayStation 4 console, and a lot of the negatives that I'm going to have to say about the game could very honestly have to do with the fact that I played this game on console rather than on PC or maybe even the PS4 Pro. I wouldn't know since I don't own either. I don't have a PC good enough to run this game, and I don't own the PlayStation 4 Pro console, so I can't do a head-to-head comparison. All I can tell you is my personal experience playing this on the regular PlayStation 4. So with that as a preface, let's get started talking about the game. First, let's talk about the combat system of For Honor, because this is primarily what you're going to be dealing with the majority of the time that you play the game, and depending on how well you like it and how well you master it, is probably going to be directly proportionate to how much you enjoy playing this game. The combat system is deceptively simple, but can be actually pretty complex when you get into the nuances of it. I'm just going to gloss over the basics so you have an understanding. Basically, there's up, left, and right attacks. If you hold up, left, or right on the right thumbstick while pressing either the right bumper or the right trigger, you're going to be doing either light or heavy attacks in that general direction. Your opponent has the ability to block those attacks by holding that same direction while also holding the thumbstick in that direction. So basically, it's kind of a rock, paper, scissors. Gee, are they going to attack up, left, or right? But you will see some on-screen prompts determining where your enemy will attack so you can block on response. Now, blocking basically just stops that opponent from hurting you, but you can't really do much afterwards with a few exceptions. But for the most part, blocking just allows you to not be hurt by your enemy's attacks. So the thing is, they can't endlessly attack because they have a stamina meter. Once they attack too much, they'll run out of stamina, which now basically makes them a sitting duck so you can counterattack. Now, there's some characters that have really fast attacks but short range, so for them, their strategy is going to be try to get in your face and hit you as many times as they can when they're up close, but try to get in, while other characters are going to be trying to keep you away or keep you at mid-range because they have big, mighty weapons that do giant damage if they actually connect with you, but they have longer range, and once you get in on them, they really don't have much they can do to push you back. So the different character classes have significantly different gameplay dependent on their capabilities. Now, it's not just that simple of attack and block. There's also a dodge button that allows you to dodge out of the way of attacks, sometimes dash backwards and then do kind of a counter attack. It all depends on the situation and what character you pick. There are 12 different character types, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get further into the details. Now, there's also a parry system. This is a little bit more complex than just blocking. Instead of just blocking an enemy's attack and preventing them from damaging you, if you time it properly, you can actually push away the enemy, leaving them wide open for a follow-up attack of your own. The timing is pretty strict for parries, but if you can master this system, you can take a character that attacks far too much, see a time when they're broadcasting their attacks a little bit too easily, parry and leading into your own combo. It could be pretty damaging and pretty rewarding. In addition to all of that, each of the 12 character classes have their own unique abilities that will build up over time depending on what kind of game mode you're playing. These can be such as using a damage over time attack, so if you stab someone and run away, they still lose health because they've been poisoned. Some characters have guard break attacks or unblockables that will make it impossible for you to defend against it. You have to dodge out of the way. There's a lot of nuance. And then finally, there's the guard break. If you're fighting against someone who is just so defensive and they constantly block everything you do, you can use a guard break to actually destroy that block and then attack right through it. However, the opponent, if they're expecting this, can also counter out your guard break, leading to them to be able to attack you, so you gotta be very careful. So the combat is actually deceptively simple, but very nuanced at high levels, and you're going to find it's not only about just getting a few hits in, but possibly countering and biding your time, blocking a lot, dancing around until your enemy is attacked too much and is out of stamina, and counterattacking. In addition, there are some unique environmental deaths that are possible in For Honor, like knocking someone off a cliff or ledge, leading to an instant kill. So there's a lot to it. On its surface, it seems like it may be very easy and simple, but actually ends up being pretty complex. Let's talk about For Honor single player mode, which quite frankly you're probably going to want to play before you ever step into multiplayer, because it gives you an opportunity to play with a few different character types, as well as learn the basic controls of the game before you step into the competitive arena. It spans the length of roughly 6 hours. I could see someone maybe beating it quicker than that, or around 5 hours, or maybe taking a little bit longer, up to 7, if you have some more difficulty with it and if you've never played the game before. And it's pretty interesting. It's a basic story of how this one warlord woman is tearing up this medieval landscape with chaos. She's just pitting civilization against civilization for pretty much no reason besides being a warmonger. And so it takes a while, but as you play as the knights and then the Vikings and then finally the samurai, you kind of wake up and realize, gee, maybe it's not a good idea for us to all be at each other's throats constantly, and you try to put an end to the bloodshed by taking out this Apollyon kind of monarch at the end of the game. It's an incredibly simple formula. If you don't play it, you're not really missing anything, but it definitely makes sense to do so because you get to learn the basics, and also you get to see some of the epic kind of semi-boss fights and how cool it can be when you're going mano a mano with one particular character and you're parrying and you're blocking. It really can be a pretty cool thing. Is the campaign of For Honor anything to write home about? Not really. And quite honestly, could the game have been sold at full retail price without it? Sure. But it's nice to know that the game developer went the extra mile and put it in there. So many people this day and age don't like just buying a game just for the online play. They want some kind of an offline component. And even though this isn't anything amazingly complex, it's not going to blow your mind, it is pretty cool that it's in there. If anything, my only major criticism of the campaign is that it doesn't allow you to play all of the 12 unlockable characters in the game. In fact, sometimes, for particular in the Viking era, you only get to play as like 2 of the classes, which is very disappointing. Why don't I get to play as all 4 characters of each civilization in the campaign? It kind of sucks because it means that some characters you're going to get a little bit of a head start and figure out how to play with them before you go online, while others you have to totally figure out online on your own because there was no opportunity to play them single player, and that's a little bit disappointing. But outside of that fact, it's nice that it's in there and it stands, as a little bit of a quality added to the game rather than not having any single player at all. But of course, the meat of the game is rooted in the multiplayer, which has several different game modes for you to play. Let's outline the different types right now. First of all, there's Duel, which is a 1 versus 1 duel. It's just you against one other person. Usually it's a best of 5 series, so whoever gets the first to 3 kills is the winner. This is really going to show off your skills and how much you've learned the combat engine, because there's minimal bullshit. There's no one else there to mess around with you. There's no other interference. It's just mano-a-mano duels, and it's pretty cool. Then you've got Brawl. This is duel with a spin. It's you and a partner dueling against someone else and a partner. So what could happen here is one person ends up killing off the person that they're dueling with first, runs over to the other side of the map and attempts to help their partner, now with a 2-on-1 handicap situation. Or another situation could be that you decide, I'm just going to run to turn tail from the guy I'm supposed to fight and immediately run to the other side of the map to try to help my partner. It's kind of unique and chaotic, but it's also kind of fun. In addition to that, you can revive your partner once they've been killed. So maybe you kill one person, you're fighting another, you fend them off, you run away and you go revive your partner. Now you created a 2-on-1 handicap situation and a higher chance to win. So it's pretty unique and different with the 2v2 battles. But I think really the core gameplay of the game and what they're intending you to play the most are the 4 versus 4 modes, of which there are 3. First, you've got Deathmatch. Deathmatch consists of 2 kind of types. There's a skirmish and there is a elimination. The skirmish maps have 4 versus 4 gameplay, but also feature AI-controlled characters, such as little grunts, as well as lieutenants that are constantly spawning all around the map, and it's your job not only to kill out the human-controlled opponents on the other team, but also to be killing off these lieutenants and the little grunts, and earning points all the way along the way. Once you earn a certain point total, the other team has one final chance of spawns in order to try to take you out, and if they can't take out the entire enemy team, it's pretty much game over. If they do take out the entire enemy team, it's kind of like a second wind, and now both teams are kind of put into a sudden death situation. Skirmish is okay, but ultimately I think it is a little bit too chaotic. There's too many characters on the screen at once. It's hard to focus in on combat on only 1 or 2 people, because you constantly have not only 4 human-controlled opponents, but all these AI guys constantly running at you. And most people who played the game competitively in these first few days kind of agreed that it's the worst mode, simply because it is far too chaotic to really control. Most people are either vying for the elimination, because that's straight 4-on-4, or the Dominion, so let's talk about those modes. So think of elimination mode as kind of a larger scale brawl. Instead of 2v2, it's now 4 versus 4 duels, and this is kind of like the standard team deathmatch or elimination style gameplay of any other competitive online game out there today. 4 versus 4 set in an epic duel to try to kill each other off. If someone gets killed, their teammates can revive them within a certain period of time. It's up to you whether you want to go one-on-one with an opponent from the enemy team right away, or if you maybe want to hoof it and try to run over to one of your teammates, leading to 2v2, 3v3, or even 4v4 battles, or maybe if someone dies quickly, it could lead to a handicap situation. Ideally in this mode, this is the one where you're going to want to try to kill your opponent with a heavy style attack, because if you do, you have a chance to do what's called an execution, which is a pretty gory and brutal death animation where usually you behead the opponent, and it means that they cannot be revived by the enemy team, making it an instant kill that counts for your total, and you don't have to worry about the enemy running over and reviving them and screwing up everything with your game plan. So this is a fun mode. If you're communicating with others, if you're playing in a party of 4 and you have voice communications and you're really kind of know the maps, this is the mode that kind of is the idyllic mode for the game, and I think that a lot of people enjoy it. But there is one more mode called Dominion that's a little bit of a spin on this. It's kind of like domination from any other competitive game out there today, where instead of focusing on the actual kills, you're focusing on capturing territories. You're running from point A to B to C, and if you stand there and no one's there, you capture it and you gain points for every moment that you have it held. If you're standing in that territory, you gain additional points. It can get contested if someone from the opposing team runs in, and if they kill you off and none of your team is standing there, then they'll recapture it and they'll start getting points for it. The unique part about this is that in the center of the map at point B, there's a bunch of little grunts, and the only way to capture point B is for you to actually kill off all those grunts in the middle, which could be a daunting task if the enemy team is running in with their heroes. Now you got a big 4v4 epic duel in the middle of the map, including little minions. It's pretty cool, it's pretty interesting, and it's one of the more unique things about the game. I've never played a game where I had an experience before where I felt like I was a lieutenant on foot, commanding these little troops and or wiping out other little troops. It's pretty unique and different. So Dominion focused around capturing the territories, while the actual elimination mode is more about just the kills. As you can say, it's team deathmatch versus domination. It's a variation on game modes that exist in other competitive games, and it's cool that they're both in there. And so I've pretty much just described the entirety of For Honor. There are some variations. There's a mini game where you can actually deploy your units and earn different kinds of equipment. Equipment is earned when you play these different matches, and the equipment that you have, you can equip to your character, and that allows characters to have different stats that improve over time. So you can either have maybe more damage per hit, or maybe more stamina regeneration, or maybe, you know, you'll have more defensive capabilities depending on what equipment you randomly earn by playing the game more and more online. Yes, you can level up your character and do prestige levels like Call of Duty. All of that's included. There are the 12 character types, and there's a lot of variation in how they play, but there are only 12 of them, and that's it for now. So there's a 1v1, a 2v2, 2 different 4v4 modes, and that's it. That's really the entirety of the gameplay that they expect you to be playing over and over and over in For Honor. Now you might say, yeah, but take a look at Overwatch last year. That game also had very limited game modes, very limited cast of characters, and people are still playing it like crazy to this day. Could For Honor be a game like that? To which I say, yes, if you love this kind of style of gameplay, if you're really into medieval style stuff. I mean, the graphics here also add to it because the graphics are quite outstanding for the game. I'd say the music is kind of a negative because the music in the game is almost non-existent. You'll every once in a while hear like an orchestral soundtrack, but for the most part there's silence, and every once in a while when you finally hear music play, it seems more random than anything else, so I don't think that that really adds anything to it. But ultimately, after you've played this game for maybe about 4 to 5 hours, you're probably going to either tried out every class by now, or you'll have played every game mode ad nauseum, and you've basically seen everything that there is to do with the game. So now you're going to want to get into the nuances of the game. I want to learn the nuances of the combat system, and I want to get good at this combat system to make it competitive, and that's going to be the drive that makes me want to keep playing the game, right? Sadly, I feel the development team for Honor made a few critical design flaws that make this game not really hold up to other competitive games of the like in the modern era, so allow me to talk a little bit about that right now. For me, there are 3 critical components that make a game competitive in the long run. First of all, you need to be able to react to things that happen in the match. It can't just be mindless mashing. It can't be just using a cheesy, repetitive pattern over and over. It has to be a game that if you see things happen on the screen, you can react to it, and you can change the entire momentum of the match dependent on your actual gameplay and reactions, and so that has to be able to take place. Number 2, there has to be consistency. And what I mean by that is when you play the game, you need to have a consistent experience every time you play it. Not one time you play it and you have one kind of an experience, and another time you can't do any of the things you did in that previous match because it's a different situation. There's a lot of factors that can lead to this, but primarily the biggest one is internet connection, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. And then finally, the third and a very important factor when it comes to getting a game that's competitive: it has to be fair, and it has to be balanced. When you play the game, you can't have it feel like for some reason there's particular classes or characters that are way overpowered compared to others. There has to be a chance, even if there is a mismatch, of every type of character to be able to kill another type of character. There shouldn't be one character that has one innate advantage over everyone. And that is also something that's going to come into play in these discussions. So first of all, let's talk about the first one, being able to react to things when you play online. I'll be honest with everyone. When I was playing this game in the alpha and the beta, I felt like the online connections were kind of okay. Sometimes they were more wonky than anything else. It seems like some matches you get a really great connection, and I was able to block and parry and do everything properly, while in other matches it just felt like a slug where I would try to do things and my inputs wouldn't come out with any kind of relative quickness, and it was kind of annoying. I was really hoping this would be sorted out for the final version of the game. Well, ladies and gentlemen, come to find out that sadly, this game has peer-to-peer connections only for online play. I don't know what in the holy blue hell Ubisoft was thinking, because most competitive games in this day and age have ditched the peer-to-peer model. This is a model that was used a long time ago, and a lot of game developers have completely gotten rid of it and abandoned it because they realize when you have people that are reliant on the internet quality of a host rather than a central dedicated server, it's a lot more inconsistent. What if the host of the game also has other people in the house using wireless internet? Now all of a sudden everyone has a bad experience because of that. What if in particular you're connected to a guy who's the host, but the host is on the other side of the country? That's not your fault, and there was certainly no way you could tell that when you were matchmaking. So why be punished and have a slower, laggy match where you can't react and you can't get a parry or you can't dodge, or normally a combo that you would use isn't even coming out properly? That's kind of the experience I got playing For Honor online. Sometimes you have an amazing match where everything comes out perfectly, and then another time you can't get anything to work. And I don't understand what on earth possessed the game developers to use this peer-to-peer connection. Now listen, I'm sure there's going to be someone who's going to come out and say, oh, peer-to-peer is not that bad, and there's still games that use it successfully. Okay, fine, but what I can tell you is this, from my personal experience, For Honor does not use it successfully. You cannot have any kind of consistency in a match online because sometimes you're going to have a better connection than another time. Rather than everyone being attached to this one central dedicated server and then maybe, you all have the same kind of connection, you'll have people who have wonkier connections. I saw people who were jittering about. In some matches, actually the frame rate kind of jitters out and characters teleport. It's just a mess. And then in addition, with peer-to-peer, if the host drops from the game, the entire game freezes up until someone else is turned into the host. So the entire game, you may be in a heated battle, and all of a sudden the whole thing has to freeze and dim and then reload, and it completely breaks the immersion of the game and gets you out of your groove, especially if you were right there in the heat of the moment in this heated battle. It's one of the worst possible things you could have happen. It gives you crazy-ass blue balls, and then you jump back in and you're not ready, and it just doesn't make any sense. Peer-to-peer does not work for online competitive games anymore, and shame on Ubisoft for using it in this game. So another major factor, being actually able to react to things going on in the game, is also hampered by one of the major problems I have with For Honor as a console game. It only runs at 30 frames per second, and barely that on the normal PS4. And what I mean by that is when you're playing both in the offline and online modes, it stays at 30 frames per second. When you run into the thick of things and there's a bunch of little kind of minions around you, sometimes it could actually dip even further than that. And as I've already mentioned, because of the wonky peer-to-peer connection, sometimes you can even have further frame drops. How on earth are you supposed to reactionarily block an attack that could 1 to 2 hit kill you in the case of the bigger characters like the Viking, when you have this inconsistency and this just wonkiness when it comes to the frame rate of the game? I'm sorry, but in 2017, and we have to stop putting up with this bullshit from game developers where they think that, oh, well, it's well enough. No, it's not. If you want us to buy your game and play it competitively and continue to play it, you need to give us an experience that's worth it. Why is it that some games can run at full, fluid, beautiful 60 frames per second while others can't do it? It doesn't make sense. It's a major failure of game development if one of your major competitors can pump out a beautiful looking game at full 60 frames and you can't do that. In addition, For Honor is not some giant world, it's little limited maps. It's unacceptable that they couldn't have this game run at higher than 30 frames per second. To make matters even worse, I've been told that people who own the PC version of the game and have a good enough computer to do it can play this game at a full 60 frames. So it's a case of inconsistency across the platforms. If you bought this on PC, you're going to have a far better experience playing it because of the higher frame rate. You'll be able to more easily react to things you're seeing on screen because you're having double the frames of animation to do so. That's bullshit. If you're going to charge me full price for a game, no matter what I buy it for, you better damn well give me an equivalent experience, not a nerfed experience because you couldn't do a good enough job to develop your game for the console. If that's the case and you just can't get For Honor to run at 60 frames per second on console like you can on PC, then don't release it for console because you're selling us an inferior version. And it's utter bullshit that I'm trying to parry and I'm trying to block and dodge on reaction, and half the time I know I'm doing it in time on my controller, but it doesn't happen or translate in the game because the frame rate is so fucking low. It's unacceptable. It's disrespectful to the customer. We should all get the same version of the game, and they did a terrible fucking job of making a competitive game viable on a perfectly good console, able of running other games at full 60 frames. And now finally, the third piece of the total cake of shit that makes this game not a very good online competitive game. There is a part of the game called revenge that I completely and utterly disagree with. This is a game mechanic that's been blatantly lifted from many other competitive games in the past. It didn't work in those, and it doesn't work here either, and I gotta call Ubisoft out for their bullshit because it's obvious they didn't know what they were doing. So what is revenge? What happens is during the course of online gameplay of For Honor, you're gonna get hit, whether you actually get struck and you bleed, or if you block an enemy attack or you parry an enemy attack, you're going to be building up what's called revenge meter. Now, depending on what class you pick, some characters actually build up revenge meters more through, say, blocking than actually getting hit, or vice versa. For the most part, you build up revenge meter by being defensive. Once your revenge meter is full, You can press the button and your character creates this giant explosion around them that knocks everyone back. Your character immediately gets super armor, which means if you hit them, they take reduced damage. They're basically like a walking tank. They do increased damage during this period of time. It basically makes them a one-man killing machine. And it's fucking bullshit, because what revenge is, in all real kind of explanation here from a competitive standpoint, it's a crutch for bad players. If someone was not playing effectively and not using the game mechanics to block properly and parry properly or dodge or use the actual kind of strengths and weaknesses of their character to win in a fight, oh, well, I'll just block a ton and then I'll just blow you out with revenge and I'll mash buttons and hopefully blow through everything you're doing so that I can do a ton of damage to you. It's bullshit. It's a game mechanic used in other games in the past, like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where it was called X Factor. It didn't work there. In fact, it completely ruined that game to the point where in competitive circles, people panned the game because at any one moment you could be totally being dominated. Oh, activate X Factor, and now immediately you get one lucky hit in and you completely win the match because of it. It's the same exact thing here. There's absolutely no reason for a game mechanic like this to be in For Honor. It's a crutch for bad players, and all it does is piss people off. Why is it that I'm in your face and I'm stabbing the living hell out of you and you're about to die because I outplayed you? Oh, now you blow me away with this stupid effect of the revenge. Oh, you get one lucky hit in and now I'm dead? Get the hell out of here. If anything, that's going to frustrate the living hell out of people who take time to learn the game. And of course, in the long run, people will say, well, it's not that big of a deal because we can find ways around it. But the fact that it's in the game shows that people who made it didn't know what the hell they were doing. And now the final point, and this one actually takes the whole cake of the reason why I really don't like For Honor Online, is the online loot system, where you earn loot every match that you play, and you can equip this loot to your character in order to either buff them or make certain things better. It's complete and utter bullshit, ladies and gentlemen, because what it means is that you get an inconsistent experience against someone who's actually played the game longer than you have. It's just not fair. Just because someone has played the game longer doesn't mean that their character innately should deal more damage if you picked the same class as them. There's a big issue with this because what it lends to is people who are going to either play a lot or spend with the online microtransactions that For Honor has to constantly be buying loot after loot after loot until they get the epic level loot that makes their character super duper overpowered compared to everyone else, and it's just not fun for a competitive game. Just because I played the game 3 days after launch doesn't mean that I should be at a major disadvantage to everyone who played it for 3 days and they're all doing double, triple damage than I am, or maybe they're building up that revenge meter quicker than I am, or they got better defense. It's not fair. A loot system like this never works in a competitive atmosphere, and I'll give you a perfect example of how to do this right versus how to do it wrong. Coming up in a couple months is Injustice 2, a competitive fighting game from NetherRealm, and they also have the same exact kind of system where you earn different equipment for your characters as you play it online. The difference here is, if you want to be competitive in that game, you can disable the gear. So that way when you're going into a match, you don't have to worry about the gear kind of negating the fact that the person's good or someone doing double damage just because they played more than you, which isn't fair. In this game, there is no on-the-fly option to disable the gear, and most people are just playing it as is and not realizing that if someone's played the living hell out of it, they could have an incredibly unfair advantage over them. It's bullshit. It's amateur night game design. It's something that you would know not to do if you'd ever made a competitive game like this before. It's quite honest that the makers of this game did not do that, don't have that experience when it comes into things like the stupid revenge mode and the online P2P connections instead of dedicated servers and a low frame rate and a loot system. There's just too much about For Honor that's frustrating as fuck that completely ruins the game, and it doesn't held up well at all online competitively, at least on the PlayStation 4. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm being 100% negative about For Honor, because I'll be honest here. The one session that I did actually play with 3 others online with cooperative communication through voice chat, we actually had a lot of fun. Even though it wasn't consistent and it didn't really feel competitive, having that camaraderie and going around communicating, going from points and helping each other with duels was a ton of fun, and I think that's where this game shines. If you're looking for a fun online cooperative style game with a bunch of buds, then For Honor is going to be your cup of tea. And honestly, yeah, the campaign wasn't much to write home about, but it was fun while I played it for the 6 hours or so. So in those ways, this game does excel. But when the game fails at its core focus, which was to be an online melee-based multiplayer game that's competitive because of 4 critical design flaws, namely peer-to-peer internet connection, a low frame rate on consoles, the revenge system that's incredibly unbalanced and basically is a crutch for bad players, and a loot system that's also incredibly unbalanced and unfair. This game fails at what it sets out to do, and I can't recommend it. This is a game that I really feel what's going to happen is just like a lot of these online-focused games, people are going to buy it, they're going to play it for a few weeks, they're going to get bored of it because they're going to realize that it's not what it was supposed to be, and they're going to drop it. And how many games like this have we played recently? And that's what pisses me off when I'm looking at mainstream media reviews for Honor. Oh, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. And then I look at the review, and they don't really even understand the competitive nature of a game and what it takes to be a good competitive game. And I'm like, these people are going to be so misled, and they're going to run out and buy this game seeing this high-numbered review, thinking that it's great. Ladies and gentlemen, when a game fails at its core design and what it's aimed at doing, it can't be an 8 or 9 out of 10, regardless if you had a few hours of fun with your buds. For Honor, for me, is a 5 out of 10. Because it's a fully functional game, and yes, there's 12 characters and there's variety, and there is a complex and nuanced combat engine in the game, so it gets credit for that. But when you can't actually implement that engine consistently online because of the issues that I've mentioned, because of the terrible design choices of Ubisoft, the game doesn't get any points above average. This game will fade into obscurity within a month or two after maybe the first major DLC, and people realize it's not all it's cracked up to be, and it isn't living up to the expectations that the game devs built for it. This game fails innately at what it needs to do. Therefore, for me, it's a 5 out of 10. In my opinion, For Honor is a great idea that fell flat on its face because of terrible game design choices, and it should be really called For Shame. Well, that is it for my review of For Honor, everyone, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving this video a like right here on YouTube, as well as subscribing to KO Gaming for all of my reviews coming up in the future. Thanks a lot for watching, and I would ask that you please check out the video description where you can find some fun stuff, including my Loot Crate discount code and referral link, a link to my Patreon, and of course links to my raw gameplay of For Honor so you can see for yourself some of the things that I went through in the campaign and the multiplayer that corroborate my views of this review. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and as always, I'll see you next time right here on KO Gaming.